Hi, welcome back to my channel. It's been a little bit since I've been uploading on this channel. Sorry about that. Only Murders in the Building has essentially sucked the very limited life forces that I already had from me when I was covering season 5. But we'll talk about that a little bit more specifically on a different date in a different video. I wanted to come back and make content on this channel that does not have to do with Only Murders in the Building, and I was like, what could I possibly talk about? And then I kind of got the idea, since we are nearing the end of 2025, which means I should probably do my CLE credits at some point before the end of the year. I was thinking about all of the different television shows that I've watched, some of which I have mentioned on this channel and some of which I have not, because I am an avid consumer and enjoyer of television shows. And I was like, maybe I should talk about the best and worst thing I watched in 2025, because I feel like that would be a very interesting conversation, especially once you see what the topics are that we're going to be talking about, because they're very different from one another. And I wanted a platform to be able to talk about them. And I figured this would probably be the best excuse to discuss it. So today we're actually going to be talking about two projects, the best thing I saw in 2025 and the worst thing that I saw in 2025. No, neither of the answers were Only Murders in the Building. I'm so sorry to disappoint you all, but again, like I said, we'll talk about that in another video at another time. So yeah, we're going to be doing a little bit of a different thing today. I don't really necessarily know how the format and structure is going to work, but I wanted to just sit down and talk about both of these shows because they could not be more different from one another, and I hope that you enjoy this conversation. Spoiler alert! If you have not seen through season 1 of Severance or through episode 5 of All's Fair, I'm not talking about season 2 of Severance, so if you haven't seen it, don't worry. And without further ado, let's get started. I was going to crochet, but my cat is sitting on me, which is just awesome. Nope. That is mommy's work computer. We don't sit on that. So I don't know if my background is crooked or if my phone is crooked or if it's a combination of both, or que no los dos. But I've tried tinkering with this thing for the last 10 minutes and it still looks crooked. So we're just going to say that's kind of an artistic decision that I went with. Can you please decide to sit or not sit? Please sit or not sit. Thank you. If you are new to my channel, hi, hello, my name is Megan. By day, I'm an attorney, and by night, I make videos about film and television shows that I find to be interesting. I also sometimes do crochet projects while I do that. So this is kind of a weird video for me to do. I've never really done just like an end of the year talking about the best and worst thing I've ever watched and like kind of doing a comparison of the two. There really isn't a connective thread between these two particular projects other than the fact that I thought one was really good and one was really bad, and I happened to watch them within a week of each other, so the difference was very, stark. I felt like this project could be a good excuse for me to just sit down and tell you guys a little bit about what I have been watching in the year 2025, because I am an avid consumer of television and I felt like it would just be kind of fun to catch you guys up generally on what I watch and highlight these particular two projects because I have a lot to say about both of them. So generally when I watch television, I like to just binge the crap out of it. I like to just sit down and continue to consume content because that's just kind of how I like to do things. I purposely sometimes will wait until there are a bunch of episodes for me to watch at once so that I can watch them in succession, especially if it's like a new season of something. I don't like to just watch one and then wait a week. Like, I could not be bothered to just wait a week to see what happens in a show. Which is funny too because my husband, when I watch shows with him, he typically likes to do the opposite. He likes to just watch one and then we just have to wait until he wants to watch another episode, most likely the next day when we eat dinner. When I've been watching Severance, I'm gonna probably get those two confused a lot because in my brain they're the same word for some reason. When we're watching Severance, we usually watch it over dinner. So I've only been watching that show one episode at a time, which is kind of an interesting experience. But I'm watching something by myself, I typically just binge the hell out of it. I would say the types of shows I watch are usually a mix of new shows that I'm interested in watching and want to check out, and my comfort shows, a lot of shows that I've seen a million times and I just find comfort in watching them again. I like what I like, but I'm also open to trying new things, if that makes sense. There are particular genres that I will not fuck with. One of them is like anything that's extremely gratuitously gritty or violent. That stresses the hell out of me. I also just don't like horror very much. It is kind of a miracle that I even watch Stranger Things because typically it's not the type of genre that I go for. If it's like got horror elements but it has other aspects to it, like I think Stranger Things is a good example of a show that's like multifaceted. It's not just about the horror and the, science fiction aspects to it, then I might be more inclined to watch it. But if it's just like a horror movie, I'm probably going to be really stressed out watching it. I have also pretty intense anxiety. So when I watch a horror content of whatever kind, I think that it's going to happen to me, and then I don't sleep for a couple weeks. I also am not really into procedural dramas. I know there are a lot of people that love like Law and Order, SVU, or like these random cop shows or these random like medical dramas. To me, they're not something that really speaks to me. I also don't love a lot of legal dramas. I feel like I'm sounding like a very picky person when I'm talking about the things that I don't like. There are some legal shows that are very good, but in general, especially because I am a lawyer, it just reminds me about how stressful law school was and how stressful and annoying attorneys are. I also really don't like watching true crime documentaries. I think there's a lot of unethical aspects about how those stories are told, and a lot of times without the permission of the families. I think the way that people talk about them and the culture around true crime content is a little weird. I am usually, other than those many categories I just listed, I am pretty open to watching things. You know, I like drama, I like comedy, I like a combination of both. I do like trash television, mostly in reality show context, but I also like my scripted shows to be good. I have compiled a list of some of my favorite shows of all time, and by favorites, I feel like it's probably more accurate to say some of my comfort shows, like the things that I just kind of gut reaction just gravitate to when I need to put something on that I enjoy and that I know is going to be really good. Some of these shows are ones that I've seen like dozens of times. Like I have probably watched Frasier like 15 times, and some of the episodes that are some of my favorites like even more than that. My family has watched Mad Men like at least 7 times. My mom is very proud of the fact that she watched every single episode live in real time when it aired from beginning to end, which, you know, pretty phenomenal. What a wonderful accomplishment. The West Wing was a show that inspired me to be a lawyer in the first place, and obviously I have an encyclopedic knowledge of Only Murders in the Building. Everybody knows that. I mean, if you know, you know. Am I right? Now, before we talk about the best show that I've seen in 2025, I want to give a couple shout outs to my honorable mentions. I finally got to watching The Bear. It definitely is not a comedy. I don't know why it's classified as that, but I really enjoy the show overall. There was a particular season that I felt like was very clearly worse than the other 3, and I think if you've seen The Bear, then you definitely understand which season I'm talking about, but not to spoil it for anybody. But every other season was really good. The performances are phenomenal. The character development. There is a particular character that I would literally die for, and if you have seen the show, again, you probably definitely have an idea of who I'm talking about. Wednesday season 2, I really enjoyed. I actually thought it was better than the first season, to be honest with you. It had more of an interesting, clear direction, and I'm very excited, again, like I said, to see what happens next. White Collar, I rewatched that with my husband. I actually can't remember if I started that in 2024. Maybe it did, but I definitely watched episodes of it in 2025, and it's phenomenal. It is such an underrated USA Network show. Everyone talks about how amazing Suits is, like Suits this, Suits that, whatever. White Collar is objectively better, and also Monk is better than Suits as well. But White Collar is one of the few procedural dramas that I actually really enjoy. I feel like it's just like a fun twist, and Matt Bomer and Tim DeKay, like literally the dynamic duo that I never knew I needed. White Collar, that's another show that I watched with my husband, or restarted watching with my husband. I think we only made it into season 3, but again, one of the shows that inspired me to be an attorney, one of the best shows of all time. Leo McGarry's performance in season 3 Christmas episode, if you know, you know. Oh my, I'm literally getting chills thinking about it. I also have been watching One Piece with my friend who is obsessed with One Piece. I don't love all of One Piece. You know, it's a very good show, but I would say the particular arcs that I really enjoyed watching so far were Enies Lobby and Impel Down. Just some phenomenal One Piece content for you. I will say you have to watch it in one pace versus One Piece, because One Piece has atrocious pacing. But when you kind of trim down the fat, very good story, very, very well executed. Andor season 2, I am very, very tempted, and was very tempted to make that the best thing that I have ever seen from 2025. It's one of the best shows I've ever just seen, period. And it's coming from a very jaded, bitter Star Wars fan. I'm actually going to be doing a separate video talking about Andor and comparing it to another Disney Plus spinoff, Daredevil Born Again, and I hope to have that out maybe early 2026. It was very, very close to put Andor up as number 1. I have never had any expectations for any of the Star Wars spinoffs ever since it got moved to Disney, and that was like, I would say maybe even rivaling, if not better than, some of the original trilogy movies, which again, coming from a jaded Star Wars fan, that is very, very truly high praise. If you haven't seen Andor, Dad, I'm particularly looking at you. Fucking watch it. You know, for the sake of timeliness here, I know that Stranger Things just recently came out, and some of you have suggested that I talk about Stranger Things in my comment section from prior videos. I don't know if I should put this in the best thing that I've ever seen in 2025. I will just take this particular time now to tell you that I have seen season 5 episodes 1 through 4 at this point. I think there are some aspects of it that are great, but I have a lot of opinions that I cannot just, very quickly summarize in this section right now, and I will make a separate video, my next upload, talking about Stranger Things season 5 episodes 1 through 4. So stay tuned for that. Hello, it's me on a new day. I just finished work, which is why I am sporting business casual for you all. I now want to talk a little bit about the show that I have deemed to be the number one show that I watched in 2025. This show has been out for a couple years. Season 2 just dropped, I think, this year, but I'm only going to be talking about the first season because that's the only one that I've seen in its entirety. So I don't even know if anyone gives a fuck about my opinion on a show that's been out for a couple years. But yeah, the best show that I've seen in 2025 is Severance Season 1, and I'm really excited to talk about it. This is a show that people have suggested in my comment section for a very long time now. So what is Severance about generally? Like I said, just talking about season 1 of Severance. So there's this company called Lumen. They are a mysterious company that does mysterious things, and their founder is a guy named Egan, the Egan family, and they all kind of like worship and revere this individual named Kier. Like they talk about him like he's a god, which is like a little strange. All the characters, or most of the characters that we meet in this show, work for the company Lumen. One thing about this company that's a little bit maybe controversial, you might say, is that they have a particular department that has severed employees. Now, severed employees are essentially people who have agreed to sever the memories of what happens at work and what they do at work from what they do outside of the office in their personal life. So it essentially creates two people, two different personalities within the same body. So once you go up in the elevator to the severed department, your brain switches off and you can't remember anything about yourself. And there's certain systems and mechanisms in place based on science fiction mumbo jumbo that prevents you from smuggling in messages in or out of the office to the person that you are outside versus the person you are in the office. The people who are working in the office are colloquially known as innies, and the ones that are outside of the office, which just has memories of your personal life, are called outies. So that's how you kind of distinguish these people. Now, in the context of this show, it creates a lot of controversy just with public opinion because, it's a little bit unethical. A little bit is kind of an understatement, but it's unethical in a lot of people's eyes to have people willingly sign on and say, yeah, you can sever my memory and I won't have any recollection of what happens to me at work. Like, how do you hold people accountable for what happens to you if you're being mistreated? So there's a lot of controversy about severed employees and the stigma that kind of develops about them in the context and the world of the show, which I think is actually pretty fascinating because it does create a lot of, potential conversations, and some of these characters have these conversations about why they decided to agree to do that. Is it ethical because you're also now creating an innie, like a different personality, a different person with autonomy, but they're not treated with autonomy. They're just treated as this being that is forced to work and has no other prospects or ability to do anything else or exist in any other capacity in their life. So that's kind of the whole crux of the world that we live in. It's not clear why the company wants to sever its employees' memories. It's assuming because they're trying to work on something secretive, or the things that they're having them do are things that they don't want the public to know about, I guess. It's also very secretive when you see them doing work, the innies, at least the main characters. They're like moving all these different wiggling numbers on a computer screen into different boxes and they're sorting them. It's like macro data refinement, I think it's what it's called. And you don't really know what the purpose of it is or why they're doing it, but there's certain quotas that they have to meet. Tensions arise at the beginning of this season when we find out with our main character, Mark S., who is played by Adam Scott, aka Ben Wyatt from Parks and Rec. Mark. He used to be a history professor, and then he joined Severance after his wife died in a car accident, and he wanted to kind of like use Severance as a way to escape from the reality of him being extremely depressed after losing his wife. His outie is contacted by an individual who claims that he has merged his innie and outie memories and that he used to work with Mark S.'s innie. He dies from complications of the procedure to merge his brain back together, and from there, combined with just other events that happen, Mark's outie kind of gets suspicious oblivious as to what's happening to him when he goes to work. And the innies are starting to gain a sense of, wanting to explore and see what the hell is going on in the outside world and alert them to the fact that maybe they're not being treated the best. And the first season kind of just explores those ideas. Why do I love this show so much? There are a lot of reasons. Let's talk about the writing and the plot and the general concept of the show. At a bird's eye view, this is a really fascinating and intentional idea. I haven't seen many of these types of shows in this genre, so maybe other shows are doing things like this. But to my knowledge, I have not seen a show like Severance before. So the concept and the very idea of having two different divided personalities that exist in the same person that can't really communicate with each other, I think that's kind of fascinating. I also just like how the show really just has an intentional purpose of this is the vision, this is the mystery that we're establishing, and everything serves towards that bigger purpose. It's very intentional with the way that it paces everything, with the details and the information that it's giving to you from episode to episode. I also just think this show is a really great example of showing and not telling. When you're trying to establish details in the first couple episodes, a lot of times shows can feel like they're very heavy on exposition, especially when you're trying to establish a mystery. You don't want to tip your hand too much, but you want to establish enough details about what's going on in this world, especially when it's one that's like different than what exists in our reality. You don't want to like just dump information on somebody by having someone either voiceover or just conversations that feel awkward and weird to give you that information. What I like that the show does is that it gives us a couple crumbs here and there to slowly establish, like, okay, here's the idea of what's going on. Okay, you see the shift in Mark S's personality when he goes up the elevator. He basically changes into a different person. We see that just in the difference with which how he walks into the office versus once he gets off the elevator and goes to his desk. I think there's a lot of really fantastic details that kind of just show you what's going on without explicitly telling you, and it makes you want to see more. You see that Mark is crying in his car in the first episode. What's wrong, Diva? What's going on with that? But then you find out it's because his wife died and he's still reeling from her death, and you find out more and more details from the first season about what happened, how long ago it was, all those kinds of things. We also have a character by the name of Helly introduced to us who is actively going through the process of like being a new innie in the department, so to speak. So somebody who has agreed to be a severed employee essentially. So their innie version has no idea what the fuck is going on, and by having this information explained to her in real time, we as an audience are also learning as well. So it feels more like an organic way to learn the information through these different devices and mechanisms that build intensity, build suspense, build mystery, build intrigue, but also giving you sufficient information so you're not wondering what the hell is happening. There is a good balance of like humorous moments, dramatic moments, heartfelt moments, things like that that really keep it feeling well-rounded. So the writing of the show and the general concept is just absolutely fucking phenomenal. Now I want to talk about the characters that we've been introduced to in Severance Season 1, because holy shit, the characters, from the performances to the writing to everything that we see from the show, fuck me up if this isn't some of the best acting that I've seen in a television show in a very, very long time. It gives me the same vibe that like Mad Men would give me when I would watch that, where it's like absolutely every single actor who is in this project is showing the fuck up to work and acting their asses off with absolutely every single scene. I think it's an interesting and particularly probably challenging project for any actor who is in the show, especially the ones who play severed employees, to make a particular distinction in your performance of your innies versus your outies, because they're like the same people in the same body and they might have the same like human instinctive preferences, but then, you know, their innies and outies have different experiences, and having to make that performance distinction based on this person has this set of memories and this person has this set of memories. It's a challenge for an actor, I would imagine. And the way that everybody who plays a severed employee carries that off and does that is very, very, very impressive. Especially Mark S., the first scene in the first episode where you see him like crying in his car, crashing out, and then the shift that he has, and you see just as soon as he goes up in the elevator and it triggers to his innie personality. Very, very impressive and very well done. The characters who work for Lumen, the supervisors, Patricia Arquette, and then I cannot remember who the other one's name is, but he's so fucking good in it. Mr. Milchek and Miss Cobell, they are infuriatingly awful, frustrating, annoying, just bad characters. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, but it's because the actors that portray them are so goddamn good at being the worst. They make them so unlikable in such a frustrating way. It's just done so well. They're creepy, they are weird, you don't understand why they're talking in the way that they're talking or what their intentions are or what they're trying to get out of you. It's just so off-putting in the best way possible, and the characters are just so heightened and elevated because of the performances of the actors. Even like Christopher Walken is in this. That was random, but he's great in it. I think his character is Bruce or Bert. I don't remember what the character's name is. Now, in terms of the writing for these characters, like I said, basically everything in this show functions to serve the greater purpose and the greater vision of the show in general. Like, everything feels very intentional. And I think the writing arcs of the characters in this show and how everyone's just kind of crafted definitely serves to that as well. It's interesting because you kind of learn throughout the season why different characters chose to be severed employees. And it kind of unravels very slowly, but you start to see different motivations for why people might do this. Maybe it's because you're trying to escape a grief or trauma that's going on in your life. Helena, aka Helly, decided to do it because she wanted to do a publicity stunt because she is the daughter of the person who owns Lumen, especially considering the huge conversation surrounding Lumen severed employees in this universe. Seeing the other side of it and seeing like what drives people to do that and unfolding that throughout the first season is just really, really well done, and the character development and the arcs that we get to see for these characters is really fascinating. But yeah, overall, the characters in the show are absolutely fantastic in the performance and the conception and the execution. Everything is just really fucking good. Now I want to talk about something I like to call film mechanics. This is something that I've done with discussions about other things and other videos on my channel. Essentially, when I say film mechanics, it refers to not like the substantive idea and concepts for a show, but what goes into the actual execution of the finished product. So for example, things like costume design, set design, cinematography, editing, sound mixing, musical score, things like that. Now, this show generally just has a very identifiable aesthetic. Everything feels a little bit retro, a little bit like off kilter in a way with the visuals that we see. Everything feels a little bit off kilter. Everything that this show is trying to do is make you feel uncomfortable because it is kind of an uncomfortable show. It is kind of a horror slash suspense genre, I think, technically. And I appreciate that those visual cues do a lot to make you feel on edge or off a little bit when you're watching the show. Similar with the music in the show, the musical score. Now, I keep saying Succession and Severance. Actually, I don't think I've said it since I pointed that out. I was joking before about confusing Succession and Severance, like the words, but actually I'm going to use Succession as an example to compare the music in the show to. Both scores do a really good job of like creating this interesting melody. It's like it almost feels like one of the instruments in the musical's composition is off by a beat or two. So everything just feels a little bit distressing and disorienting, but it's still melodic and sounds good, but it just feels like chaotic. And that musical score and that melody is echoed in different variations throughout the episode to match whatever vibe is going on. And I think the music really does a good job of setting the tone in a way. The set and costume design. I don't know what year this show is supposed to be in, and I don't know where we are supposed to be. I think we're in the United States. I'm pretty sure. I keep thinking it's like upstate New York, but I have no basis for that decision other than just the fact that there's snow on the ground in some episodes. There are cars that look like they exist in the 90s, but then people have like ultra thin and large touchscreen iPhone looking devices for their phones. People seem to have like different types of technology in their homes depending on whose home we're in. Everything just feels off. And to have the audience kind of be in the dark like that, in a way, it feels intentional, and again, kind of feels like we're trying to make us feel a little bit uncomfortable and on edge. And I think that does a lot to kind of build the suspense and the intrigue and the mystery surrounding this show. It feels like you're kind of in the same boat as the innies. Office itself and some of the set pieces and the decorations that we have feels very like mid-century modern a little bit. It's got kind of a lot of retro elements going on. It kind of reminds me of a much paler version of the TVA away from Loki, but also the endless, windowless hallways also remind me of McCann Erickson from season 7 of Mad Men. So we got a little different motifs going on. Both are technically retro as well. And again, makes it feel very disorienting for the innies and reflecting that to the audience, because it just seems like an endless maze of these offices that we don't really know where we are, what time of year it is, what year it is, and it just feels a little bit uncomfortable, but in an intentional way that enhances your experience of the show. So yeah, overall, I think just from A to Z, from concept to execution, this show is really fucking excellent. I just got back from dinner, so my stomach is full and now prepared to talk about things that I did not like that I watched in 2025. I would say on the whole, I was pretty lucky in the sense that I watched more things that I liked than things that I didn't like. I usually have a good sense of what I'm going to enjoy when I tune into something, so I'm pretty selective with what I choose. However, there were a couple stinkers in 2025, and I wanted to highlight those as my honorable mentions before we get into the subject of conversation for this part of the video. Number one, I wanted to mention, even though it's not a television show, but I felt so compelled to mention that I did not enjoy watching this movie. I saw the movie Ready Player One a couple weeks ago. My husband saw the movie listed as a suggestion on Netflix, and he was like, hey, why don't we watch that after dinner or during dinner or whatever? And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. It's directed by Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg directed one of my favorite movies of all time, Lincoln. So I was like, yeah, of course, let's watch this. What's the worst that can happen, right? This movie is so fucking dumb. It was such a chore to watch, and I don't say that lightly. I know that this movie is based on a YA novel. It's not meant for a 30-year-old woman and her husband sitting at home with their cat watching while eating Thanksgiving leftovers, okay? I understand that I'm not the target audience for this movie. Basically, it's like you take 17 different tropes from different action, science fiction, YA movies, put them in a jar, shake them together, and pull out 5 or 6 of them, and that's just basically how this movie feels. It is so cookie cutter, so boring, so predictable, and just awful in its execution. My husband and I were just kind of laughing at a certain point at how ridiculous and absurd so many of the things were. I also watched Daredevil Born Again, and this one kind of hurt a little bit, and I plan on doing a video talking about Daredevil Born Again at some point soon on my channel, hopefully before the second season comes out. I really love the show Daredevil. I think it is probably the best superhero television series or movie that I have ever seen ever, and that's just my opinion. It's just so well executed, and when they announced that they were doing Born Again, I was really excited because I love Charlie Cox, love the characters that are in the original show, I love Wilson Fisk. I was like, this is going to be awesome. I'm super excited about this. But unfortunately for me, Daredevil Born Again, I think missed the point of what made original Daredevil so good, and I don't know if that's maybe the MCU effect, because now this is officially in the MCU canon. I don't really know what to pin it on. It just seems like it's a shadow of its former self, and not in a good way. It's just trying to be dark and gritty for the sake of being dark and gritty, but not in a way that furthers the plot or the characters. I am interested to see what they're going to do in season 2 based on certain announcements of certain characters that are going to be in season 2. From what I saw in season 1, I was extremely disappointed. Finally, and I know that I might alienate my one friend who makes me watch One Piece all the time. I did give him a heads up. I guess this will be a good test to see if he actually watches my videos or not. I hate to say, and I'm so sorry to any One Piece fans out there, but Thriller Bark, that arc is just not it. I understand, without spoiling anything for anybody, that there is a pivotal character that is introduced to us in that arc, and everything pertaining to that character's backstory and getting to know that character, fine. Even watching the abbreviated, condensed version of One Piece in the form of One Piece could not do enough to solve the pacing issue that is just One Piece in general. I feel like it was especially prevalent in this arc. Okay, I think it's now time to talk about Kim Kardashian's new legal drama, All's Fair. I had no intention of watching this show. As it is, I don't really have much of an allegiance to the Kardashians, in the sense that I'm not a fan of theirs. I don't really watch their show or know much about them other than just cultural osmosis things. I don't really like legal procedural dramas or television shows. I'm a lawyer, so I don't really get that much of a thrill of learning about the legal process in a show, because I live that, and law school was just kind of kicked the joy out of it for me. So whenever I'm watching watching shows, I like to watch things that don't remind me of the stresses at work, but that's just me. So I had no intention of watching the show when it came out. I was like, oh, okay, that's nice, and I just moved on with my day. But then when I started seeing some of the sound bites that a lot of articles and reviews online were using to describe this show, specifically ones that were using language to the effect of, this is the worst drama that has ever been created in the history of television, something deep within me felt like it was my ethical duty and obligation to talk about it on my channel, because I am an attorney and I do talk about television shows, and this is a television show about attorneys. I want to quickly, before I get into this discussion though, say one or two quick things about Kim Kardashian. Now, like I said, I don't know a ton about the Kardashians. I know allegedly they might not be good people. I have to probably ask my friend Carly for more information because I don't really know a ton about the Kardashians. I know that they are either loved or really hated. I know that they're kind of like responsible for certain memes. Like I think one of them tried to cut a cucumber and it didn't go very well. I know that there is the whole like, people just don't want to work. You got to get off your ass and work. I know there's the whole like, so I know a little bit. However, on researching for this show and even just some of the press blurbs talking about the show before it came out, I learned that Kim Kardashian is actually attempting to be a lawyer. In the state of California, apparently you don't need to have a college degree or a law degree to take the California bar exam and be a licensed attorney. You can do other things to kind of supplement that education or kind of take the effect of that, like working under an attorney and having certain number of like internship experience. And I guess she's taking that route to become an attorney in California. Specifically, I also learned that Kim Kardashian is doing this because she wants to work with the Innocence Project, which is an organization, they have different ones in different states, that helps people who have been supposedly wrongfully convicted of certain crimes to get exonerated and get like restitution for the time they spent in jail being wrongfully accused of a crime they didn't commit. Kim Kardashian took the bar exam recently and it came out, I think a couple weeks ago, that she did not pass. And one of the reasons she gave was that she was asking ChatGPT answers to some of her study prep questions and it was giving her the wrong answers. And I know a lot of people are kind of like laughing at that and also pointing to the irony of her playing an attorney in this show. I will just say from personal experience the following. I took a bar exam that fucking sucked. I took it during COVID. Fire alarms went off in my apartment building when I was taking the exam. It was like delayed twice. There were so many uncertainties surrounding the exam. It was absolutely fucking awful and I almost had a mental breakdown. And that's not an exaggeration. It was mentally one of the worst times in my life just because it's such an intense test, such an intense amount of money that you have to pay for it. And it just went horribly. I did pass, which was great. I had a pretty decent margin, but it was just awful, the whole experience. And I couldn't imagine taking a test and not only not passing and just feeling the devastation of that, but having everybody in the world know that you failed. And I mean, it's not a big deal if you do fail, like you can take it again, but it is in the moment, like understandably very upsetting because you put a lot of work into that. Kim Kardashian might be this multi-millionaire celebrity and super wealthy and rich and powerful, can do whatever she wants with her life. But if you're taking the effort and the energy to study for a bar exam and you don't pass, like I do have empathy for that on a human level. I also will just say too, it would be easy for Kim Kardashian or someone like her to just be like, yeah, I'm gonna write a check for like $500,000 or whatever and help these people that way. And like that would be a really generous and great thing to do. But she's taking it one step further and she is actually trying to kind of put her money where her mouth is to become an attorney. And while yes, some people might think it's absurd for her to try to do that, I think it's kind of fucking cool. I don't know why the fuck she's looking up things on ChatGPT. Like, girlfriend, just use your Barbary materials. Do not look at ChatGPT. It will do you dirty every single fucking time. But I do respect the hustle. That's all I just wanted to say about that. Now let's talk about why Kim Kardashian is a horrible lawyer in this show. Okay, because I know that my parents watch my videos and will never, ever, ever be caught dead watching the show, they're going to want and expect me to explain the plot of the show to them so that they can understand what the hell is going on. And I'm assuming that most of you who have decent taste in television will not watch the show either. So it probably would be helpful for me to give you a quick rundown on what the hell is going on in All's Fair. So let me do that. Like I said, it is a procedural legal drama, I think, if that's what you want to call it, that is currently airing episodes on Hulu. Stars Kim Kardashian, Glenn Close, Naomi Watts, Sarah Paulson, Ed O'Neill, a bunch of other really talented actors who have no business being in this show, and it is produced by Ryan Murphy. Given Ryan Murphy's breadth of work, I was not really sure what to expect of this show, and to be honest, after watching it, I still don't don't really know what I was supposed to expect or get out of it. So basically the premise of the show, Kim Kardashian is a lawyer along with her coworker, a character by the name of Naomi Watts. It starts off the first episode with a flashback to 10 years ago where they're sitting in the conference room with the male partners of their law firm. And the male partners are, of course, being old and terrible and sexist and awful. And they're talking about all these inappropriate jokes and just making the women just kind of sit in the background while they sit at the conference table. I think Kim's name is like Aurora Grant or something. Is it Aurora? Is like Aurora Beam? No. Oh, it's Alora. Okay, never mind. That doesn't sound remotely familiar to me, but whatever. Alora Grant, aka Kim Kardashian, and Naomi Watts go to the only female partner of the firm, a character by the name of Glenn Close, and they're like, hey, girl boss, we want to leave this firm because everyone sucks and they're horrible, and we want to start our own boutique firm, like a rival firm to yours, and we're going to only have female attorneys and we're only going to have female clientele. We're going to help the women. Glenn Close takes this very well. She's like, I'm so proud of you guys. That's amazing. Even though you guys are starting a rival competition with us in the same city, I am going to allow you guys to take one employee of your choice with you, which I recently resigned from my old job, and I don't recall my boss being quite that gracious. Maybe I need to live in Ryan Murphy's fictional version of whatever the hell he thinks happens at law firms, but that definitely was not the tenor of the conversation that I had with my boss. Good for her for being above it all. Glenn Close allows them to take a researcher by the name of Emerald Green, and that is one of the only character names that I remember because it is so fucking dumb. She's like really good at digging up dirt on people, and they're like, see ya, we're gonna go start our own firm and make a ton of money. Before they leave, we also run into Sarah Paulson's character, who is a female associate at this firm, and she's really bitter and upset that they don't take her with them. Sarah Paulson is basically told that she's a bad person and she always steals their yogurt, so they're like, you're not allowed to come with us. Bye. Sarah Paulson gets really pissed off and also decides to quit, and this is essentially like her villain origin story where she decides to become a vengeful, awful, petty, bitter human being, aka probably my favorite character on this show if I had to pick one. She basically dedicates the rest of this 10-year span to seeking revenge and just making these characters miserable at all costs. Glenn Close also just decides to stay at this firm even though she knows they're sexist and awful. So basically 10 years later, we're at this boutique firm owned by Kim Kardashian and her friend. They're super successful. They have a lot of clients that they're helping and they only help women and all of that. And we, basically are introduced to the structure of this show where they introduce a new case every week that they're helping. Each week something new happens and it's usually resolved by the end of the episode. There are though a couple overarching storylines, if that's what you want to call it. Kim Kardashian, aka Aurora Beam, is married to a football player who is quite a bit younger than her. His name is like Cash or something, or Chase, Caleb, something with a C. I like to call him Man Bun because he has a slicked back man bun pretty much in every scene of this show. So she's married to Man Bun. We find out Man Bun is cheating on her with literally everybody in LA, and at the end of the first episode he asks for a divorce. And the little twist that we find out with Man Bun as well, in the divorce proceedings, he has enlisted Sarah Paulson to represent him, and she's obviously hellbent on making Kim Kardashian's life miserable. And then Kim also hires her old friend slash partner from the sexist law firm Glenn Close to represent her as well. And then Sarah Paulson has like some weird sexual tension chemistry with Man Bun, which is very weird and feels forced and awful and terrible, and she washes his hair and it's like the worst thing that I've ever seen. So that's all going on and causing a lot of tension. Glenn Close is married to Ed O'Neill and he's dying of cancer because I don't think that he agreed to do literally anything else in this cursed television show than just sit in a bed and die of cancer. So that's all happening. There's this other storyline with Emerald Green's character. She's like happily single, has 3 children who are supposed to be, I think, 18 years old, but they all look like they're 35. So she's about to enjoy being an empty nester and they're all like, Mom, you're going to be sad and alone if we go to college. You need to find a man. So everyone in her life basically shames her into finding a man. So she goes to a friend's singles party, meets this guy that she's vibing with. Lo and behold, the next day we find out that he had basically roofied her drink, tied her up in a bed, and took incriminating pictures of her and possibly like assaulted her and did worse things. And she's trying to figure out who he is and what's going on. Turns out this guy is the son of a person who Glenn Close's character screwed over in court, or like he was a bad guy and she exposed the fact fact that he was a bad guy, and then now the son is seeking revenge on Emerald Green for whatever reason, and then he dies under mysterious circumstances, the guy that drugged her. People aren't sure if it's a homicide or a suicide, and now it's like, ooh, who killed him? Oh my god. And then Naomi Watts is like dating a doctor and no one fucking cares. This is basically all the structure of what's going on. Okay, now let's talk about the things that I don't like about All's Fair. There's a lot of things, and I don't want to just sit here and be like, yeah, it fucking sucks, and just leave it at that. I kind of want to be a little bit more intentional with my analysis so that you understand just why this show is not good. I guess just from a bird's eye view, the general premise of this show is troubling to me because I don't understand what the fuck the point is of what we're doing here. Especially after contrasting that to a conversation about a show like Severance, for example, where there's such a clear, thoughtful, creative idea to just use as a jumping off point for the story. All's Fair is kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum for me, where I don't really understand what the point of anything is that's happening, and I don't really know what the writers want me to feel after watching this show. There's really no clear direction or a novel idea for me of what it's trying to achieve. And that's not to say that every show has to be extremely creative or novel in its vision. Some shows are just kind of meant to be a comfort show for people who like a particular genre of things, and that's totally fine. Not every show has to be like groundbreaking and creative in every respect, but I will say I feel like a show at the bare minimum needs to have an idea of what it wants its audience to feel about it, and I don't really know what this show wants me to get out of this show other than the fact that the costumes are incredibly tacky and horrible looking. I have kind of racked my brain trying to figure out maybe this show wants to be like campy. Usually with camp, you know, there's a little bit more of a self-awareness in the writing and execution where it's like, yes, I know this is absurd, but I'm in on the joke and I kind of doing it intentionally. That's like what the writers are trying to convey to you. And I feel like with this show, there's really none of that. There's no acknowledgement or self-awareness to some of the absurd qualities of things that are going on. So when absurd things happen, it's kind of played straight rather than having a little bit of that wit and whimsy in the execution. So it just feels like the show is just completely unaware of the fact that a lot of things that are happening feel absurd and stupid. I also thought, you know, maybe the show truly is just trying to be a legal procedural drama that happens to star Kim Kardashian and a bunch of other really high profile actresses. Usually in a procedural show, there's some sort of like interesting twist that delves deeper than, you know, barely scratching the surface. With this show, I feel like the way that they address some of the legal issues for these divorce cases, it's so surface level. It's so just like rudimentary, basic rattling off of facts having to do with family law. I feel like they're just taking some of Kim Kardashian's bar prep material and just picking out random flashcards and just throwing those into the case, and that's just all we're dealing with here. It doesn't feel like they're really giving as much care and attention to making that procedural element interesting enough for it to be the purpose of the show. I also don't think the show is really interesting enough on the interpersonal relationships for it to be kind of like a soap opera drama kind of show. I was thinking, you know, maybe they're just trying to use the procedural aspects as like a backdrop for some of the relationships between these characters and making a commentary more on like what it's like to be a female attorney. But the show isn't really taking any of that seriously either. The way that they're addressing, you know, what it might be like to be a female attorney, again, feels so surface level, feels so generic and cliche that they're not actually delving into it in a meaningful way for it to feel like it's having the effect that it should have. Also, the interpersonal relationships and some of the overarching storylines are so fucking boring and uninteresting that if that's the true crux of everything that's supposed to be going on and that's what we're really truly supposed to care about, it's failing fundamentally in that way because they're so watered down and ill-defined that it just doesn't work on that level for me either. Whatever the focus of the show is supposed to be, it seems like it's utterly failing in that way, and it leaves me back to the question of what exactly is the point of the show and what am I supposed to be getting from it. As far as the writing with like the dialogue and some of the episode by episode things that are happening, I feel like this is some of the worst dialogue that I have ever seen in a show in my entire life. And I don't really know how to express just how awful it is other than to just show you quotes of what people are saying, like what actual human beings say in this show.
So what if I give myself home perms? It's economical. Fuck you.
Love and war. You chose war, and we won it.
It's our anniversary, Chase.
Fuck me, raw.
When are you gonna twist off his scrotum and feed it to him in small raggedy pieces?
You get hot.
Hear me?
Yes, Mother.
Good thing you're so thin these days. Less space for your personality.
Beef curtains. Organic and lightly brushed with salmonella and fecal matter.
Is Mr. Lionel in full fantastic fetish mode, dressed as a filthy piggy. Those people under him are suckling his piggly wiggly titties, or as they call them on the farm, sow teats.
Hi, it's me on another night in a room that is very bluely lit. I kind of feel like it's giving me the Twilight first movie lighting, just slap me on a treadmill in the woods somewhere, walking in slow motion with a wind machine on my face because I'm feeling like a vampire in Forks, Washington right now. Let's talk some more about Kim Kardashian's scripted legal drama series because apparently I haven't said enough about it already. I want to talk about the characters in this show. Specifically, I want to start with the low-hanging fruit that is the acting performances of the cast for this series. I don't really necessarily know what I personally can say that has not already been said a million times on the internet. I guess for the purposes of being thorough, I will just say for the record that this is some of the worst acting performances I have seen in my entire fucking life on a television show. There's some great actresses and actors running around this project, and yet everybody is giving the same aloof, detached, sterile, robotic, emotionless performance regardless of what's going on and regardless of what their characters are supposed to be doing. There's wildly different types of situations and everybody is just giving the same energy in every fucking scene, and it's kind of creepy. It's like they're all aliens that have taken over a human's body and they don't really know how to act like humans, so they're just mimicking behavior that they've seen. Sarah Paulson, I think, gets the closest to a convincing performance, and I think a lot of it has to do with her character being the antagonist in the show. She just has a lot of crazy things that she says, and I think Sarah Paulson is just like having fun being a villain, even though her villain origin story is weak as hell. But she's just kind of like the only one giving a little bit of something to the role. I think at one point she called somebody like a pathetic, egregious lawn chair or something crazy like that. I don't remember what the line was, but it had something to do with being a lawn chair, and it kind of made me chuckle because I wasn't expecting that. None of these characters are doing anything in their acting performances to enhance any of the material that they're given, even though the material is also very weak. Specifically dealing with Kim Kardashian's performance, again, I don't really know what I can say that hasn't already been said to death like a million times on the internet. Kim Kardashian, understanding that she's not a trained actress.
Hi.
This is worse than any athlete going on a commercial or being the guest host on SNL that I've ever seen. This is worse than Michael Jordan in Space Jam, and that's truly saying something. I don't expect her to be giving me like a Meryl Streep level performance or anything like that. But, Kim, you have felt emotions though, right? It was truly Kim Kardashian's performance in this was I'll just show you a clip because I don't even know the words to describe it.
Are you glad I have a healthy ego? If not, I take this personally.
Laura, I'm drowning here with you.
What are you talking about? You're famous.
What's going on with you? I feel like you're not telling me the whole story.
What's really going on? I want a divorce.
You want a divorce.
What are you talking about?
Now, talking specifically about the characters in this show, I think Ryan Murphy might hate these women subconsciously because I sure do, but I feel like the script is written in a way where he thinks that the audience should like them. And that's a bit of a disorienting feeling where you feel like you are not on the same page as what the writers want you to feel about the characters. I think it just shows like kind of a little bit of an obliviousness to how these characters are coming off. I think the writers of the show intended for these characters to be seen as strong, powerful women who are standing up and fighting the good fight. But in reality, he has created a group of women that are so void of any personality, of any meaningful development whatsoever. And it's not impossible to create good development early on in the first season of a show. I know that sometimes it takes a little bit of time for your characters to cook a little bit, but there's truly, after the 5.5 episodes that I've watched, there's truly nothing to latch onto about any of these characters. They are vapid. They are cliche. I understand that not every character has to be likable, but it's concerning when you can tell clearly that the show writers want you to find them to be likable, but you just don't. For example, in Breaking Bad or in Mad Men, where your main characters are flawed and intended to be very, very unlikable at times, but that's by design because the writers of the show want you to feel that way. For example, and this kind of was, I felt bad laughing, but this was just kind of insane, the editing and the way that this whole sequence was written. So in like like the second episode, there's this woman who I think got screwed over by her husband, because everybody in the show gets screwed over by their husbands because husbands are terrible in this show. She excused herself from the initial client meeting because she was like upset and distraught. And then you see that she jumps off the balcony to end her life because she was just so overwhelmed with the amazingly horrible obstacle that was put in front of her by her husband. Hard cut. The women are sitting on a jet sipping champagne, laughing and chatting about whatever is going on in their life. There is no emotional weight to anything that is happening having an effect on any of the characters. They seem totally detached and separated from all of the strife and the challenges that are happening, that makes them just feel very out of touch and very just like disingenuous. And again, it is a strange choice when you're considering the fact that Kim Kardashian keeps saying she wants to be a lawyer to help people who have been wrongfully convicted and who are going through terrible things in their life, to kind of portray these women as being so unaffected by the women they're supposed to be helping. Is this satire? Like, is this supposed to make a comment on how detached the rich attorneys are from what's going on in their lives? Such a strange writing choice, and I don't understand why they did it this way.
I don't understand!
I did a lot of talking about all of the really fantastic just choices that Severance made in putting together the finished product of the series. In all of the ways that Severance did a very good job with making a lot of these decisions, All's Fair did a fucking terrible job. In my opinion. The visual aesthetics of the show, just how everything looks and just the set designs, costume designs, things like that, it feels very confusing. I literally jumped out of my seat when I saw that Kim Kardashian wore a pair of pants in this show that literally had a thong built into them to mediation for a divorce proceeding. If this show was like committing more to the campy elements, I would be like, oh, okay, that's so clearly like ridiculous and awful, but it maybe is being self-aware about it. But the fact that sometimes this show seems like it's taking itself very seriously, and then Kim Kardashian's ass is just like out while she's toasting with champagne after a mediation win in her divorce case. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that? That just feels like Kim Kardashian, whoever is doing the costume designs for this show, really, really, really wanted to just have over-the-top fashion as the statement pieces in the show. But it's not like adding anything to it. It's just making your characters look fundamentally unserious. And again, I don't know if we're supposed to be taking these characters seriously because I don't know what this show wants to be.
I don't understand!
So when you have these crazy fashion choices that just kind of make your lawyers look ridiculous, I don't really know what to do with that. It's very confusing to the overall message. If the show is truly leaning into more campy elements, then yeah, maybe you can have these people who dress ridiculously, you know, showing up to work with a giant bow and 15 different fedoras like Emerald Green character is supposed to be. Putting all of that aside, the fashion is just bad. I know I'm just sitting here in a fucking $8 shirt from Target and a sweatshirt that I've had for years. Aesthetically, it doesn't look good. And if you're supposed to kind of like ooze opulence and wealth and success and everything like that, you just look like somebody who's kind of trying to do all of those things. Some of the set designs were a little bit nuts to me. All of the set designs kind of blended together. Everyone always kind of has a similar looking type of mansion. All of the offices or the law practice buildings where everyone is supposed to be going to work kind of blend together as well. They're just all very modern, sleek looking buildings, and I couldn't necessarily tell where things were happening at what time. So I'm like, okay, are they at home or are they at the office? Are they drinking in like a conference room or are they drinking at a bar? Everything just kind of blended together, and maybe that's just because I don't have a sophisticated eye for like different modern California buildings like maybe the set designer for the show does. The music for the show, it's not a big complaint, but it is a complaint nevertheless. I feel like the music is just constantly the same theme playing in the background and it doesn't change regardless of anything that's happening. They play the same exact music in situations where they're celebrating a client's success as in situations where Emerald Green wakes up after realizing she was just attacked by a random person who then commits suicide, as in the same situation where Kim Kardashian is seducing her husband and they're having sex on their anniversary night after he pretended to forget to get her a present. I do think music does set the tone in a very critical way, and I wish that the show maybe played with the theme a little bit more, or maybe kind of mixed around the music that was playing in the background a little bit to just kind of like help us guide the emotions that we're supposed to be feeling, because the writing is not very clear, so it's kind of hard to tell how we're supposed to feel at any given moment. That is all that I ever possibly have to say about All's Fair Season 1, Episodes 1 through 5, or about Severance Season 1. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments section what you think of Severance Season 1 and All's Fair Season 1, Episodes 1 through 5. Just to let you guys know going forward what I intend to cover in the next several weeks. I do want to do a video talking about Season 5, Episodes 1 through 4 of Stranger Things, and I'm going to bust my ass to try to get that out before Season 5, Episodes 5 through 7 come out. Once that happens and then the finale airs and everything like that, I'll probably do a coverage video early 2025 of the remaining episodes of the season. And then I want to try to work on my Only Murders in the Building Season 5 analysis and breakdown, because that is long overdue. And I think I've had enough separation from the season where I can adequately talk about it without getting mad. And then I also want to work on, just personally for me, because, you know, this is a channel where I talk about what I want to talk about. I want to sit down and do a video talking about Andor Season 2, comparing it to Daredevil Born Again, because I feel like those are two interesting Disney projects that have landed very differently for me in terms of their successfulness as a spinoff. I am pretty excited for the things that I want to talk about in the next several weeks. I hope you guys are as well. In the meantime, I'm going to go pay attention to my cat, because otherwise she's going to murder me in my sleep. So, bye!